Welcome to The Lone Cure, the internet corner where you'll learn lifelong lessons in minutes of listening. Today's read is Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. So if you would like this summary, please consider reading the book itself since it's worth it. If you like this content, like and subscribe, and check our channel for more. Okay, let's unpack this then. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into, well, a really thought-provoking work. 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos by Jordan B. Peterson. This book, it actually started from a Quora question, believe it or not, something like, what are the most valuable things everyone should know? And from that, Peterson built this pretty profound framework for navigating, modern life. Our mission today is really to pull out the most impactful nuggets of wisdom, help you get the core principles, and maybe see how they could apply to your own life.
Yeah, and what's remarkable, I think, is how he weaves together insights from all over the place, ancient myths, modern psychology, philosophy, into these practical rule. It's not just abstract stuff. He's offering concrete ways to improve things by understanding these really fundamental forces, order and chaos, that shape our reality. He digs into how these themes are deep in our evolution, our biology, even our oldest stories. It's guidance for dealing with uncertainty, really.
Right, and he jumps straight into this idea of rules. Now, that word rules, it can feel kind of restrictive, can't it? Especially today when we value freedom so much. But he calls them an antidote to chaos. So why does he think rules are actually, liberating?
Well, he frames order and chaos using the Taoist yin-yang symbol, the two serpents, head to tail. And the really key insight isn't escaping one or the other, but finding meaning right there on the border between the ever-entwined pair. That border, that's where we're stable enough to actually do things, but also exploring enough to adapt, to change. Think about society, right? Our shared beliefs, our values, they let us cooperate, work together, tame the world, as he puts it. Without that kind of value structure, people are just paralyzed. You can't even really see what's important because action, even perception, needs a goal. And a goal has to be something you value.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like needing a map or a compass to even start moving.
Yeah.
But then he hits you with something else right up front that's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah.
This idea that life is suffering, inherently. Why is that so crucial for him? Why start there?
Well, he argues that, all the ancients, from Buddha to the biblical authors, knew that life is suffering. It's not special to you or me. It's just part of the deal, guaranteed, because we are born human. He says it pretty bluntly, actually. If you or someone you love is not suffering now, they will be within 5 years, unless you are freakishly lucky. Now, that sounds kind of grim, but the point isn't to depress you. It's about acknowledging reality. Because if you get that, you realize the goal probably isn't just constant happiness. He calls that a pitiful ideology. Instead, you need something deeper. A meaning that's more to do with developing character in the face of suffering than with happiness. And seeing it that way, it helps you avoid falling into that aggrieved victimhood trap, Stops you heading down paths of resentment or despair.
Right. So accepting the suffering actually frees you up to aim for something more solid than just feeling good all the time.
Right.
Okay, building on that, one of his big rules is tell the truth, or at least don't lie.
Yeah.
Seems simple, right? But he unpacks it in a really personal, almost radical way.
Yeah, he shares this pretty striking story from his clinical training. He said he soon came to realize that almost everything I said was untrue. He admits he was using language to bend and twist the world into delivering what I thought was necessary, but I was a fake. So he started this really disciplined practice, only saying things that the internal voice would not object to, trying to align his words with his, inner truth. He found that when you don't know what to do, tell the truth. And he tells this story about some aggressive, drunk ex-biker showing up at his door late at night, trying to sell a toaster. And Peterson just told him the truth. No posturing, no trying to dominate, just giving him money wouldn't be good for him, and it was making his wife nervous. And that straightforward, unvarnished truth actually worked. It diffused the whole thing.
That's a powerful personal story. But then he makes this huge leap, connecting that individual act of telling the truth or not telling it to the health of whole societies. For a lot of people, that connection might seem like a stretch. Can you walk us through how he builds that bridge from one person's small lie to, say, the totalitarian state?
He points directly to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who drew what Peterson calls a direct causal relationship between the horrors of the Soviet state and the almost universal proclivity of the Soviet citizen to falsify his own day-to-day personal experience. People lied about small things, everyday things. Why? To prop up the dictates of the rational ideology-possessed communist system? Almost. Peterson brings in Milton's Lucifer here as the spirit of totalitarianism, that mindset that falls in love with its own productions, thinks everything that needs to be discovered has been discovered. Total certainty, basically. And this connects to the idea of the big lie, how people often more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, precisely because it's so huge, so audacious, they can't imagine someone making it up. So the question this raises for you is, if you keep saying yes when you really mean no, you start to become someone who can only say yes.
Right.
It's not just about being polite. He argues it's about keeping your soul intact and preventing society itself from corrupting from the bottom up. It means trying to be precise with your words, face the chaos, consciously decide where you're aiming, because, as he puts it, lying leads to hell.
Wow. That's a pretty stark warning. Okay, so if telling the truth is that critical, what about the structures we live in? Peterson gets into hierarchies, and he uses these fascinating examples: lobsters, chickens. What can lobsters tell us about human society?
Right, the lobsters. He talks about how a lobster with high levels of serotonin and low levels of octopamine is a cocky, strutting sort of shellfish, less likely to back down after a fight. And this biological mechanism, he says, mirrors human beings, where low serotonin often correlates with lower status and tends to drop further with each defeat. And get this, he points out that Prozac even cheers up lobsters, which is kind of mind-blowing evidence for the evolutionary continuity of these systems across species. He also mentions the chicken pecking order and the harsh reality that the poor and stressed always die first, whether it's chickens or, he suggests, humans in disadvantaged neighborhoods during epidemics. It all points to what sociologists call the Matthew principle from the Bible verse. To those who have everything, more will be given. From those who have nothing, everything will be taken. It's this observation about how advantages and disadvantages tend to compound over time in hierarchical structures.
Okay, so these hierarchies and this Matthew principle seem pretty baked in, deeply rooted. Given that reality, how does Peterson suggest we even approach trying to achieve things, personal aspiration, without just getting crushed by comparing ourselves to everyone else who seems way ahead?
And that leads right into Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Yeah. He points out very rightly that in today's world, online especially, no matter how good you are at something, there is someone out there who makes you look incompetent. It's constant. That kind of comparison is just a recipe for feeling miserable, right? So his counter is crucial. There's not just one game at which to succeed or fail. There are many games. And if changing games does not work, you can invent a new one. Frame your progress personally. Focus on your own incremental improvements day by day. That's the key, he argues, to avoiding despair in a world that constantly shows you people who are better, faster, richer.
That really reframes the whole comparison game, doesn't it? Aiming higher but against your past self. And this idea seems to tie directly into how we actually see the world. Peterson mentioned some really interesting psychological experiments here.
Yeah, the famous ones, like Simon's gorilla in the room experiment, where people watch a video of a basketball game, count the passes, and 1 out of every 2 miss the person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle. Or the server switch study, where someone asks for directions, ducks behind a counter, and a different person pops up, and people often don't even notice the person changed, sometimes not even their gender or race. So what's the principle? Peterson explains it like this. You are blind because of what you desire. He says, perhaps what you really need is right in front of your eyes, but you cannot see it because of what you are currently aiming for. Which implies pretty strongly that our value structure needs some serious retooling. End quote. If your life feels wrong, maybe it's not life's fault. Maybe it's what you're aiming at that's the problem. You need to, as he puts it, scour your psyche. You have to clean the damned thing up.
Okay.
But the good news, the hopeful part, is that by aiming small, just making your life a tiny bit better each day, you can get this kind of compound interest on personal growth. It can lead to huge changes over time because what you aim at determines what you see.
Yeah, that's incredible. It makes you really wonder what you're not seeing right now. Okay, so building on this theme of finding meaning through challenge, he has this rule that sounds, well, kind of quirky at first. Do not bother children when they're skateboarding. How does that specific rule unlock a deeper truth about growth and taking risks?
Well, his argument is that children, and maybe especially boys, he notes, need to engage in dangerous things, trying to make themselves useful. It's how they develop competence, independence, courage. He talks about things like skate stoppers on benches or the panic in Toronto that led to removing playground equipment deemed too risky. He sees this as excessive overprotection that actually harms kids by preventing necessary growth. And this links directly to Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Now, that sounds harsh, maybe, but his point is that parents do kids a disservice by failing to use whatever is available to help them learn, and that includes negative emotions, clear boundaries, discipline used mercifully, of course. He points out how kids naturally push limits. They'll fight nighttime unconsciousness until they're staggered by fatigue or are perfectly willing to provoke adults. They're exploring, testing boundaries to find security. He even tells this intense personal story about basically wrestling his young son, Julian, into sleep as an illustration of how sometimes firm parental intervention is needed for socialization, for learning rules.
So it's about finding that balance between necessary challenge and clear boundaries. And this seems to connect to a broader idea, too, that healthy relationships, not just with kids, need both strength and vulnerability. He shares some really powerful stories here, doesn't he? Like about his daughter Michaela's illness and even Superman.
Yeah, exactly. Through his daughter Michaela's terrible struggle with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, her fragility, Peterson says he realized something profound. What can be truly loved about a person is inseparable from their limitations. He connects this right back to storytelling. No limitation, no story, no being. And the Superman example illustrates this perfectly. The original Superman became too powerful, right? He developed powers so extreme that he could abuse himself out of anything, just magically solve any problem. But that made him boring. No hero at all, Peterson says, because there was no real struggle, no stakes. So they had to reboot him, give him kryptonite, make him dependent on the sun, give him reasonable limitations. That's what made him admirable, again, relatable. So what stands out to you here? Maybe it's that understanding that real strength isn't about having no weaknesses. It's about accepting them, letting kids face necessary risks, embracing our own limits. That's what allows for growth, for meaning, for a real story to unfold in our lives. It's about becoming competent, not just staying protected.
Right. Limitations give us our story, our purpose. Okay. We've touched on meaning quite a bit, but he has a specific rule for it. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. That sounds like a really fundamental and probably difficult choice we have to make constantly.
It is. And he digs into the history of this idea. He explains sacrifice, in its oldest mythological sense, as essentially delay of gratification. This understanding, he argues, was tied to the discovery of time and causality, specifically. The idea that our voluntary actions now can change the future. That's a huge leap. He uses that monkey trap analogy, where a monkey reaches into a jar for treats but then can't pull its fist out because it won't let go. That highlights our human tendency sometimes to not sacrifice the part to preserve the whole. We cling to the immediate thing, the expedient thing, even if it costs us something much bigger down the line. He also discusses the biblical story of Cain and Abel. Abel's sacrifice is accepted, Cain's isn't. Cain then gets resentful, bitter, and murders his brother. Peterson links this to the real danger of resentment, when our efforts or sacrifices aren't rewarded, especially if we feel we've given everything and it still wasn't enough.
That's a really potent connection between these ancient stories and our own potential for bitterness. So, okay, if life is suffering and finding meaning involves sacrifice, what's the ultimate goal then? What should we be aiming for?
Well, meaning, Peterson says, emerges when impulses are regulated, organized, and unified. It comes from the interplay between the possibilities of the world and the value structure operating within that world. Basically, if your values, your aims, are genuinely directed towards a betterment of being, and that means not just your own being, but being with a capital B, existence itself, then the meaning you find will be life-sustaining, will make everything matter. It's about choosing the heroic path, acting as if existence might be justified by its goodness, if only you behaved properly. It's a massive call to take responsibility.
So it's not just about thinking these things, is it? He's really challenging us to live them out, this improvement of being idea. It sounds like a continuous process.
Exactly. It's not a destination you arrive at. He stresses that proper being is process, not a state, a journey, not a destination. It's this continual transformation of what you know through encounter with what you don't know, which means constantly facing up to and trying to fix your own insufficiency, your own errors, your own ignorance. The core message running through the whole book is really aim high. Set your sights on the betterment of being. Align yourself in your soul with truth and the highest good. And that's not passive. It means actively trying to overcome evil, reduce suffering, improve yourself in concrete ways. So what does this mean for you listening? It's about starting small, maybe. Cleaning up your own life first, stopping the things you know are wrong, and always striving towards that highest good. Oh, Manning, it's a call to action, really, to consciously take part in this unending job of turning chaos into better, more meaningful order. Recognizing that, as the proverb goes, it is better to rule your own spirit than to rule a city.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into 12 rules for life, it really does lay out a profound, if challenging, roadmap for trying to live with purpose and responsibility, especially when the world feels chaotic. It pushes you to look inward, face your own shadows maybe, and understand that real strength might actually come from accepting your limitations.
Indeed. I think the consistent message is that you personally have this incredible capacity to choose meaning over expediency. You can actually decide to aim at the improvement of being. And like you said, it's not about reaching some endpoint of perfection. It's the ongoing process, telling the truth, knowing yourself better, always striving. It's a call to be conscious, to participate fully in your life and in the world. Because as Peterson keeps saying, what you aim at determines what you see. So the question maybe is, what will you aim at tomorrow?